Pokémon, for the most part, is a family-friendly franchise. The only time I can think of where I was scared of Pokémon was when I was 7 and I read that one book where the Pokémon turn into zombies. Why did they do that? Anyway, Nintendo has, again, for the most part, kept Pokémon a safe and accessible franchise for pretty much any age. However, the same cannot be said for the Pokémon fanbase. Throughout the time they've existed, Pokémon Romhacks have been made and released by fans that take a much darker approach to Pokémon. Whether it's just a simple creepypasta game, or it's a full-fledged post-apocalyptic ROM hack, the biggest region of Pokemon horror has been from the fans. So today, I want to take a look at a few of these ROM hacks and make my own observations about them. Are they corny? Are they actually worth playing? Those are the kind of things that I want to find out. Remember that subscribing and liking is the best way to support me and see more videos like this, and let's get started. The first game I want to talk about is called Pokémon Snakewood. This is probably the most well-known of the 3 hacks I'm going to talk about today, and it's also probably the best one as well. The plot is basically this. You're the younger sibling of the protagonist of Pokemon Ruby, the game takes place 3 years after that game, and the entirety of the Hoenn region has gone crazy because there was a random zombie apocalypse for no apparent reason, which affected both trainers and Pokemon. You wake up in a destroyed little root town with your memories lost, and meet Professor Birch and have to go on a trip to find your brother and Professor Birch's daughter, and try to find a way to get rid of the zombie plague. Rather than fighting regular trainers, you fight zombie trainers who use zombie Pokemon like Rotmander and Bulbasaur, the names might need a little bit of work, with your own Pokemon. That's the gist of it. From what I played, this game is interesting in its own way. The sprite work for the zombie Pokemon are pretty cool, but the sprite work for the zombie trainers is mostly abysmal with only a few exceptions. Your character does also talk, which, while especially important for development in this game, is always a bad sign when it comes to trying to take ROM hacks and most games in general seriously, and your character is also kind of a nonsensical jerk, but if you can see past that, it's not all bad. It has an interesting premise and could be a fun playthrough despite its flaws. It was made in 2010 when Pokemon ROM hacking was still in its early stages, so although some of the ideas and, again, some of the sprite work is kinda silly, and the world building and designs of certain places is pretty lacking, it's not awful overall. There are a lot of things to appreciate about it, like the well-paced story and decent character development, and also the fact that this game took a less edgy and corny approach to a Pokemon horror game. You can tell it doesn't take itself completely seriously sometimes, which is unlike the other games I'm going to talk about here, that take really dark themes and handle them in a weird manner that just comes off as an edgy 13-year-old making a Pokemon game. Next up, we have a complete 180 to a game much darker and also much worse. Let's talk about Plaguemon. Plaguemon is a hack of Pokemon Red and Blue, and its whole premise is that a nuke went off in Kanto and now everybody is really sad, deformed, and the Pokemon are heavily mutated. Now, this premise is a very popular one, and it could be cool in this context. Just think Fallout but add Pokemon to it. However, in this game, the premise is handled awfully. I get the concept of Pokemon being mutated, and some of the sprite work is pretty interesting and well made, but the game itself really sucks and doesn't make any sense. Yes, the Pokemon have mutated, but some become completely different creatures, which just isn't how mutation works. For example, Charmander completely transforms and becomes a weird devil thing, which just isn't how nuclear mutation works. Give it 2 tails or a bunch of eyes or something, and then it kinda makes sense, which is the case for a lot of the Pokemon in this ROM hack, but this design and a lot of others just don't. That's also looking past the straight up stupid Pokemon names. For some reason the game has a tendency to make reference to drugs and stuff, like they named Bulbasaur Weedasaur? Like, could it get dumber? The story is also pretty lacking. You're just a random kid who is trapped in the Fallout, and you're trying to escape Kanto and find refuge in a place unaffected by radiation. To do this, you need to climb to Mount Olympus / beat the Pokemon League. Since this is the case, the story beats themselves aren't really that different from regular Red and Blue. The main attractions are these reskins of Pokemon and seeing the beloved Kanto region in ruin. I will say that even though the newly introduced mechanics are super dumb, such as being able to kill NPCs with a flamethrower, they do require extensive skill to pull off. The way the battles work and look is a little bit different too. You'd have to dive into some assembly and complex stuff to get this kind of thing done, which is pretty impressive. There's also a surprisingly high quality intro cutscene, so that's cool too. There are a lot of vulgar references and dialogue throughout this game though, and it really just makes it seem like like an emo 12-year-old made a Pokemon ROM hack in his free time. Maybe this would be a playthrough I'd do just for the irony of it, but there's no way this can be taken seriously in any way. Let's move on. Our last hack goes by the name of Demon Island, and it takes a different approach than these other two by making it feel more like survival horror than putting you on a direct quest like a regular Pokemon game. You start with a regular Pokemon adventure, then you eventually get stranded and wake up on an island with a bunch of flesh-eating Pokemon that are, as quoted from the Poke community page, about to eat you up instantly, and you need to escape this cursed island by any means while trying to find the source of this curse. You face a cult, demonic beings, and monsters, and again, directly quoted from the Poke community page, everything in this island is just very chaotic. Despite the description sounding like it was written by a Redditor from 2019, there are a lot of things I can appreciate about this game. One thing is that there are new evolutions for certain Pokemon. These Pokemon have been shrouded in darkness and on the island for so long that it allows them to evolve, which is a pretty interesting concept for regional evolutions. A good number of Pokemon gain the ability to evolve, with a lot resulting in interesting typings like a dark/psychic type Gardevoir evolution named Gothine, and a dark/grass type Victory Bell evolution named Vambite. There's also a number of fake mons you can find, some of them being edited versions of older Pokemon like Cubone becoming Bone Crush, and some being completely new like Oroglass, which is a psychic/fire type. You can also find a number of demons, which seem to include both edited Pokemon that become demons like Shadow Wudo, and also regular demon kind of things like, you know, Demon. The story itself isn't anything special, but the difficulty of the game is actually pretty high, so if you like that, this might be a good choice. It's been criticized for the amount of required grinding, bugs, and translation errors, which is probably why the Poke community page is so funny, but other than that, it seems like a decent enough ROM hack. It takes itself pretty seriously, unlike Snakewood to a certain extent, but it also doesn't go too far into vulgar topics or come off as plain stupid like Plaguemon does. It's a nice middle ground. Anyway, with that, we've gone over 3 Pokemon horror ROM hacks. I definitely like Snakewood the most of these, but Demon Island isn't that either. Plaguemon might be fun to play ironically, but I don't know. I also don't know what pushed me to make this video. I mean, it's the middle of summer, we aren't even close to Halloween or anything scary, but whatever makes me want to make a video, I guess. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, remember that subscribing and liking is free and the best way to support me, and the channel if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.